mountain air and the sounds of a 100-year-old narrow-gauge steam locomotive set the scene on a perfect morning in the historic town of Chama, New Mexico. We are on the Cumbres Toltec Scenic Railroad, and Cumbres Toltec K36 number 487 will be leading the charge of our Antonito-bound eastbound trip today.
Leg of railroad between Antonito and Chama and created the Cumbres Toltec Scenic Railroad. And we've been running.
On board, we would depart promptly. On this trip, we were doing the Cumbres Toltec bus then train. We parked our car in Antonito and took the bus west on Highway 17 through Cumbres Pass to Chama. Our trip will consist of a 64-mile ride over the famous Rio Grande narrow gauge route between Chama and Antonito. This is one of the two large portions of the former Rio Grande narrow gauge system that are preserved and operated as tourist railroads. The locomotives being used on this route are former Rio Grande locomotives, and most of the coaches in use are replicas built new for the Cumbres Toltec.
As I head back to the back of the car, I want whoever's the most responsible for your group to raise your hand to the line. Usually there's no dispute, but if there is a dispute, I always hand it to the woman.
Departing Chama, we would pass by the Cumbres Toltec Chama shops. Outside, we would see K37 number 492 disassembled, awaiting the next steps in its return to service. We would also pass by Galloping Goose number 5, which was in town for a series of excursions during the fall. As we exit the yard, we pass under the rare double spout water tower, then cross the Rio Chama before hitting the main line. Today, we are in coach class. These comfortable bench seats are in a 2x2 configuration. Our train had decent ridership, but there was still plenty of space to spread out on the train. In addition to sitting at our seats, we would spend much of the trip riding in the open-air gondola or the open-air vestibules between cars.
In the movie Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, go home and watch the movie again. I was there. We're going over the trestle, the first trestle here pretty quick. We go over 2 trestles before lunch. Very high trestle. This one's 100 feet down the Brook Creek. You still
Almost as soon as the train gets out of Chama, we would start our ascent on the Cumbres Pass. Our train will climb grades as steep as 4% on the way up to Cumbres Pass station.
We have a severe siding on the left up here. Oh, right there. Yeah, right there. That's much more exciting than Winnie the Pooh, right? But to see Winnie the Pooh, you have to squint your eyes a little bit or have a few drinks with you. Nice. Winnie the Pooh's not clear to me right now.
The Cumbres and Toltec has been operating since 1971 on 64 miles of narrow gauge track between Antonito, Colorado and Chama, New Mexico. The tracks are jointly owned by the states of Colorado and New Mexico, and the Cumbres and Toltec operate the trains on the line. During their operating season, the Cumbres and Toltec runs 2 trains per day, one westbound out of Antonito and one eastbound out of Chama. The trains meet in the middle of the line at Osier for lunch, where passengers can continue in the direction they were going or flip back to where they started. The railroad also offers bus services in the morning and evening for passengers looking to see the entire line.
Get some good views from up here at the Chama Valley. We call this Windy Point. Trailhead is the Continental Divide Trail. The Continental Divide Trail, the CDL, runs this path here. So if you're an avid hiker and you want to hike from Mexico to Canada, you'll be hiking right.
At Cumbres Pass station, we would make a brief stop. Here, the train would take on water before we continued to Osier.
Taking me to Chama. On occasion, they can buy a ticket and go into Chama to resupply. Then come back the next day, resume their hike. We're hiking. We're going over the trail right now. This was the old highway that went from Antonito to Chama, and you can see the rail bed or the road bed over there too, part of it.
What's the name of the trail?
The Continental Divide Trail, or the CDL.
Well, we could say we went over it.
We will be taking on water here.
As we head east out of Cumbres Pass, we would get a look at the old Rio Grande car inspector's house, the Cumbres Y, and a portion of the restored snow shed. Just east of Cumbres Pass, we have already started our descent down the mountains. Here we are running through the famous Tanglefoot Curve. The tracks double back in order to drop nearly 100 feet in elevation in just under a mile and a half of track. This unique arrangement puts the tracks running right next to each other at a vastly different elevation. At mile 320, we would cross the Wolf Creek Trestle, the highest bridge on the Cumbres and Toltec. After about an hour and a half of running, we would arrive at Osier, the lunch stop on the Cumbres and Toltec. Here we would have a very nice buffet-style lunch at the lunch house. At Osier, we would take a quick look of the 487 before grabbing our lunch. The 487 is wearing one of the Rio Grande's famous oversized plows that were necessary during the winter months on these routes. After we grabbed our plates, the westbound train from Antonito to Chama arrived. This train is being led by the 484, another K36 locomotive. The 484 is still a coal burner, something becoming rarer and rarer by the year. At Osier, we would get a quick tour of the 487's cab. This locomotive was converted to burn oil. Oil is in general cheaper and easier to acquire than coal and has less risk of sending sparks through the stack and starting a wildfire. There are some drawbacks, however, including that sometimes you can run out of steam and need to rebuild pressure. On more level railroads, this is normally not a problem. However, on the steep mountain grades with heavier trains, this can become an issue if the steam pressure gets behind.
They were probably just a little bit low and just had that steaming ability to come right back. It's more of something you don't really notice up there. As much
With the all aboard called, we're back on board the train to continue east. As we depart Osier, clouds from the mountains start to take over. Thankfully, they will disperse before our descent into the deserts of Colorado.
They do a really good job.
They do.
They do it on one condition though. You all agree to it. You all agree. You wouldn't fall asleep on me yet. Not allowed. There. Not allowed. Anyway, try to we have lots of we're scheduled to get in about 4:45. If you want to get a picture of the other train,
probably after 5 at this point. No, if are you guys taking the bus back to Chama? I don't know what time you guys will get back. We're probably going to be closer to 5:15. We're running about a half hour late. We're supposed to leave, I think, 1:45 or 1:30. Not to say they can't pick it up, so. That's what we started when we get the bus first, because I knew after a long day I wouldn't be back to work.
At the Rock Tunnel, we would pass the Garfield Monument, paying tribute to President Garfield, who passed away in 1881. With the sheer drop to the south, we would enter the tunnel for a brief run through darkness. As the afternoon rolled on, we would continue our eastbound descent from Cumbres Pass down to Antonito. The last 20 miles or so of our run would be through the deserts of southern Colorado. Arriving back into Antonito, we would pass by the Antonito shops, where the 168 and a recently acquired DL 535E were sitting. Once our train is spun on the balloon track, we will have completed our 64-mile trip through Cumbres Pass and on the Cumbres and Toltec Railway. With all passengers off the train, the 487 can head to the shops for the night. As the 487 is parked, our time on the narrow gauge has come to an end. The Cumbres and Toltec is a great ride for anyone looking to explore the rich history of narrow gauge railroading in Colorado and New Mexico. Make sure to stop by and give the road a ride anytime you're in the area or planning a trip to Colorado.